Nothing can beat a good old pro wrestling return. Sometimes these can be a genuine shock, other times they've been rumoured quite a bit or even promoted by the company. Whatever the case, it's great seeing our favourite superstars return to the ring, and in today's video I'll be looking at some of my favourite WWF and WWE returns of all time. Like the WWE debut video I put out a while ago, these won't be in any kind of order. These were all picked by myself, so apologies if your favourite didn't make the cut, but you're very much encouraged to use the comment section to share your favourite returns. There's been quite a lot of them over the years, so it can be tricky picking out the best ones, but sound off in the comments and I'll have a read after the video goes live. The term never say never gets used quite a lot in WWE, and back in the day, Vince McMahon used to scream anything can happen in the WWF at every God-given opportunity. But both statements were very true when CM Punk returned to the company at Survivor Series 2023. Punk's departure back in 2014 was the biggest pro wrestling story of the year due to the absolute chaos he caused after walking out of the company. He famously went on his then friend Colt Cabana's podcast where he was very outspoken about WWE's terrible work practices, from poor on-site emergency healthcare to unkept promises regarding creative, from hypocritical management at the very top to serious burnout working WWE's brutal road schedule. It seemed like CM Punk didn't only burn his bridges, he completely blew them up in a very public manner, so the idea of Punk one day returning to WWE seemed like a pipe dream. He went on to have a pretty rough time in the UFC before eventually returning to pro wrestling when working for AEW, but that relationship turned sour too thanks to a few unscripted moments in the ring and a backstage fallout with Jack Perry. Tony Khan even stated on TV that he feared for his life backstage in regards to CM Punk, which is something that the AEW owner will unfortunately never escape for the rest of his pro wrestling tenure. With everything going downhill at AEW, Punk decided to walk again, and the stage was now set for a big WWE return at Survivor Series 2023 in Chicago. Was there a little spite involved in this return? Would Punk have come back if he didn't have such a bad time in AEW? I honestly think it played a massive role in his ultimate decision to come back to WWE, but either way, WWE did a fantastic job of keeping this one under wraps even though it was hotly rumoured online. Online news outlets had to admit they had no idea if Punk was making a comeback at Survivor Series, but the Second City Saint made his shocking return, and according to practically everyone who's been interviewed, he's become a real team player who's having a good time working for WWE. Chris Jericho's had more pro wrestling returns than I've had Sunday dinners. He's had more returns than Davey Boy Smith's apply deadly chin locks. Okay, that's a bit of a stretch. But Chris does enjoy making a comeback every now and then, and so choosing just one is kinda difficult. I'm going to go with the Save Us Y2J return from 2007 because it really was a lot of fun trying to break the code just before Chris's comeback on November 19th. Videos would air on Raw, SmackDown and pay-per-views featuring garbled words, letters, numbers and file names. Within these binary code videos were clues to a returning superstar, and fans online would come together and try to work out who the videos were referring to. Granted, the majority of fans guessed Y2J pretty early on, but the WWE put a few red herrings in the videos too to throw fans off track. Modern fans could compare these to the Bray Wyatt or Wyatt 6 videos and QR codes that aired more recently on WWE programming. It created a lot of buzz as fans tried to work out the riddle. Folks were looking up Bible verses, some fans were even reversing the audio to try to find out clues. It was all very meta-based and it worked well in 2007. I thought it was very creative. The code Save Us 222 was broken and deciphered. The 222 was actually Y2J. And Chris came back to Raw with his old waistcoat and new haircut to what he described as a pretty underwhelming crowd response. Jericho wrote that the fans in 2007 weren't the same as the fans in 1999, and he expected a bit more from the audience when he appeared on stage. But I put this down to two things. One, everyone knew it was going to be Chris by the time all the videos had aired. And two, the WWE made the dumb decision of showing Chris backstage before he made his way to the arena. Warrior's 2014 return was quite a shock too, seeing as, like CM Punk, he had publicly ripped the WWE apart, and the WWE returned the favour by destroying Warrior's legacy through an infamous DVD release. But it's not this return I want to talk about. Instead, we're going to go back to 1992 when Warrior made an unexpected return at WrestleMania 8. Warrior made some pretty big demands in July of 1991 that Vince McMahon seemingly adhered to. Warrior apparently threatened to no-show SummerSlam that year if Vince didn't agree to new contract terms, but Vince would then suspend Jim Hellwig 1 month later while admitting to only agreeing to Warrior's previous demands in order to keep him around temporarily. McMahon had another problem though. His biggest babyface, Hulk Hogan, was going to leave the company sometime in mid to late 1992, so McMahon went back to Warrior and the two worked out a new deal that would lead to Jim Hellwig making a comeback on WWF programming. The return happened at Mania 8 and it was totally unexpected. Warrior ran down to save Hogan from a beatdown at the hands of Big Sid Justice and Papa Shango, and Mania 8 ended with Warrior and Hogan celebrating inside the ring. I know the name Ultimate Warrior sparks a lot of negative feelings for some wrestling fans even 10 years after his passing, but this was still a great return in regards to the surprise and overall fan reaction. It's not difficult to see how popular the Ultimate Warrior was, and you don't need someone explaining it to you from the usual you had to be there point of view. And even though personally I was never a huge Warrior fan even as a kid, I do still enjoy this comeback at Mania 8.
Gonna give them what they came to see.
Cody Rhodes returned to WWE after having a very significant run in AEW. Not overly pleased with WWE Creative and his position in the company back in 2016, Cody left WWE to begin an impressive run on the independent scene. He also made stops in TNA, Ring of Honor and New Japan before being the catalyst for AEW's creation. And with how AEW came to be, you just never imagined Cody leaving the company that essentially wouldn't exist if it wasn't for him. Cody took a lot of pride in AEW and he, along with his wife Brandy, made some moves behind the scenes to help set up the future of the company, from including sensory rooms for those who needed them at AEW shows, to funneling in new talent via the Nightmare Factory training school that Cody established a year after AEW went into business. It just felt like Cody was a real company man when it came to All Elite Wrestling, and the work he did there seemed to ensure he wasn't going to leave anytime soon. Well, fast forward to WrestleMania 38 in 2022 and Cody's back in WWE. It's another return that was very much rumoured, but the pop was still incredible when he came out to face Seth Rollins as a surprise opponent. It's no secret that AEW fans were beginning to reject Cody as an on-screen performer towards the end of his run with that company. And looking at the comments made online fairly recently, most AEW diehards agree that WWE is a much better fit for Cody Rhodes, but I don't think anyone could have envisioned just how successful he'd become after his return at WrestleMania 38. He's currently the WWE's #1 babyface, he's selling a ton of merchandise, and he's leading the charge in a reinvigorated WWE that's breaking all sorts of records in terms of brand partnerships, attendance, and revenue. The NWO's WWF debut, in a way, kind of made people stop and remember that, whoa, holy shit, Hulk Hogan's coming back to the WWF. Almost like the black and white overshadowed how big of a deal it was that the Hulkster was doing business once again with Vince McMahon. Razor and Diesel coming back was a pretty big deal too. These were two big players during the New Generation era, but Hulk Hogan was simply on a different level. Hogan was the man who put the WWF on the map. He headlined WrestleMania after WrestleMania. The company was built around Hulkamania during their initial boom period, and many fans instantly thought of Hulk Hogan when they thought of pro wrestling. Just before the dawn of the WWF's New Generation era, the relationship Hogan had with McMahon wasn't great. The steroid trial had put a strain on their relationship, and with Hulk eventually going off to become a main player in WCW, it seemed like the days of Hulkamania running wild were well and truly over. Hogan and WCW did have some initial success in the early days of the Monday Night War, but as the war raged on, it was evident that the WWF didn't need Hulkamania anymore. McMahon, however, understood that the name Hulk Hogan still had a lot of value even after WCW went out of business. McMahon announced on live TV that he was going to inject the WWE with a poison known as the New World Order. On an episode of Raw, he showed Hall, Nash and Hogan on the Titantron, which just didn't seem real for some reason. I don't know why, but this moment always stands out for me as something really special. And the trio made their official return at No Way Out 2002 to a pretty great ovation. It was here that fans finally realised that yes, Hulk Hogan, the Hulk Hogan, was now back in the WWF. It's like the reality of the whole situation really sunk in when Hogan tried to speak for the first time, and Hulk would eventually end up bringing back the red and yellow shortly after a crowd-pleasing match against The Rock at WrestleMania 18. Gonna cheat here and name two Undertaker returns that I personally enjoyed. The first still has mixed opinions to this very day, but it's the Judgment Day 2000 return and the debut of the American Badass. The Deadman's comeback at this pay-per-view wasn't really a surprise. The TV spots for Judgment Day hinted that The Undertaker was coming back, and so fans were kinda expecting the Phenom to show up at the event. However, fans did not expect Taker to come out on a motorcycle wearing denim and looking like a member of the old DOA faction. Using Kid Rock's American Badass as his new theme music and showing a brand new, more personal side to his character, The Undertaker had completely revamped his overall image, which some folks liked while others didn't. I'm in the camp that did like this new look for The Undertaker, but opinions are like assholes, I guess. The Undertaker felt that he had to change things up. The Attitude Era was passing him by, and he felt the Deadman character couldn't go much further during this particular era. So fans got the American Badass, who would eventually evolve into the Big Evil character. You could say Big Evil was a little more sadistic and a little more violent than the American Badass, but both characters were cut from the same cloth. The second return I want to highlight was the return of the Phenom. This one happened at WrestleMania 20 when The Undertaker brought back the Deadman of old. Granted, this could maybe be seen as a hybrid character, with Taker keeping a lot of offense he developed during his days as the American Badass and Big Evil, but fans really wanted to see the Phenom return, and that's exactly what they got in Madison Square Garden. The entrance alone was absolutely incredible. Like Chris Jericho, The Undertaker's made many returns over the years, and I could easily put together a video looking at each and every one, but these two stand out for me as two of his very best. Street says Shane McMahon's doing a little work right now with AEW. At the time of recording this video, a photo was posted online with Shane having some sort of meeting with Tony Khan, and it looks like Tony's in shock right here. Personally, I think this photo was absolutely intended to get out to create a lot of buzz, but on the flip side, when Shane returned to WWE back in 2016, everything was kept secret and it really did pay off. The WWE was in a bit of a slump, and Vince McMahon giving his daughter an award on TV wasn't going to make things any better. But when Here Comes the Money played in the arena and Shane came out to interrupt the ceremony, things got a lot more interesting. The Boy Wonder hadn't been seen on WWE TV since 2009, and his return did make a lot of noise online. Shane's one of those TV characters you just don't forget. And seeing as he'd been involved with WWE storylines on and off since 1998 onwards, there's no way fans weren't going to act favourably to his return. Stephanie McMahon and The Authority were the WWE's biggest heels at the time, so bringing in Shane as a babyface was a good move. And good moves were kinda rare in WWE during this time period. Shane said he wanted to control Monday Night Raw. Vince said he'd give his son control if he could beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania inside Hell in a Cell. Shane did not get the job done, but despite this, he remained on TV and he would become an on-screen authority figure and part-time competitor, eventually finding a new home on the SmackDown brand. Shane's last return to WWE didn't go nearly as well, the less said about that the better, but his 2016 return was good and it kickstarted a new storyline that may have treaded old ground but was still pretty effective. Remember when Matt and Jeff Hardy returned to the WWE at WrestleMania 33? Sure you do. This one was also rumoured, but the fact that the Hardys wrestled the Young Bucks during WrestleMania weekend kinda threw fans off a little. Matt Hardy in particular had done some incredible work with his broken Matt character, and he had managed to reinvent himself during a time when the Hardys may have been viewed as yesterday's news. So there really was a lot of interest in getting these two back, plus fans absolutely loved Jeff no matter what predicaments he got himself into. I know this love's dwindled a little as Jeff continues to make mistakes, but back at Mania 33, none of that mattered at all. I was lucky enough to be in the crowd for this comeback. At the time, it was the biggest pop I'd ever heard live, and it was only surpassed by The Undertaker's return at WrestleMania 40. And it's another one of those comebacks you can watch over and over again, and it'll never lose its magic. A great moment in time here, and a great surprise at WrestleMania 33. The 1-2-3 Kid left the WWF in 1996 to join his buddies Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in WCW. As part of the NWO, he was known as Six, and he, along with Scott Hall, were the NWO guys you could actually rely on to put on good matches. Six suffered a serious neck injury, and he received a FedEx from Eric Bischoff stating that his contract had been terminated. Kid said he felt this was merely a power play from Bischoff to show Kevin Nash and Scott Hall who the real boss of WCW was. So Six's termination, in the eyes of Waltman himself and his friends in the NWO, was completely uncalled for. When Shawn Michaels wrestled what was thought to be his last WWF match at WrestleMania 14, a spot opened up for Sean Waltman in D-Generation X, and the 1-2-3 Kid returned to the WWF to stand beside another one of his clique buddies, that being rising star Triple H. Waltman cut a scathing promo on WCW while standing in the middle of a WWF ring. He said the Outsiders would be here on Raw tonight if they weren't being held hostage by Eric Bischoff, and he also addressed something that Hulk Hogan said to Kevin Nash live on WCW Thunder. Hogan said that Six couldn't cut the mustard and that's why he got fired from WCW, so Waltman retaliated by saying that Hollywood Hogan sucks and he's got Eric Bischoff's nose stuck firmly up his ass. WCW actually tried to sue Sean Waltman after this promo, and when WCW's lawyers asked him why did he say Scott Hall and Kevin Nash would be with him in WWF if they weren't being held hostage, Sean said he talked to Kev the night before and it was Big Sexy that said it would be a great idea if he said it on live TV. Sean was also asked by the lawyer what he means when he says the word suck it, and Waltman replied by saying, "What do you think it means?" I'd get ripped apart if I didn't include this one, and although it was a return from injury, it was still an incredible moment in WWE company history. Triple H tore his quad on the May 21st, 2001 episode of Raw. He continued the match and he even got put in the walls of Jericho after suffering the injury, but this one was pretty serious and it had the potential to be career threatening. The injury ended the McMahon-Helmsley era storyline. Triple H would miss the whole WCW-ECW invasion, but fans didn't forget about Triple H at all, judging by the ovation he got in Madison Square Garden on the 7th of January 2002 episode of Raw. New York went absolutely crazy for the game's return, and the reaction's been described as one of wrestling's longest sustained pops. The audience just kept going wild while Hunter made his entrance, and you can't help but get caught up in the moment when watching it back. Triple H stated that he was a bit nervous about this comeback, mainly because he had been returning as a babyface. The game was always more effective as a bad guy, and Helmsley said he didn't really know what to say or how to act when cutting his return promo. I think we're all in agreement though that he did pretty well here. This return's readily available on YouTube, so there's no reason not to check it out. Triple H may have a lot of detractors, but on this night, everyone was on their feet for the King of Kings. While some wrestling channels have called this return a disaster in terms of what it all led to, I still couldn't believe my eyes when Bret Hart walked down the ramp on Monday Night Raw, and for me, it's not so much where the return would bring Bret Hart, but it's more about the moment itself. The excellence of execution coming home after a well-documented and very controversial exit in 1997. Like CM Punk in The Ultimate Warrior, the Hitman was very vocal about his dislike for the company ever since leaving, maybe even more so than those men. Bret wrote in his book that he would never forgive Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels for what they did to him back at the 1997 Survivor Series, but Bret felt he didn't have much choice but to work with WWE when he got word that the company were going to release a DVD all about Bret in the same vein as the infamous self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior documentary. Instead of letting the Screwed documentary get put on store shelves, Bret decided to work with the company to put out a career DVD that celebrated his entire WWF run, and this opened up the doors for an eventual Hall of Fame induction in 2006. Some 4 years later, Bret apparently wanted to put Montreal behind him. He wanted to make a little money too, I'd imagine. So Bret came back as a guest general manager for Monday Night Raw, and he shook HBK's hand in the middle of the ring, finally putting an end to their long and bitter feud. From here, Bret would work a program with Mr. McMahon. They had a pretty grim WrestleMania match, but again for me it was more about the moment. Seeing Bret Hart enter the ring again at WrestleMania seemed 100% impossible at one point in time, so just having him being part of the show was enough for me. The match wasn't good, but I really don't know what people were expecting either. Edge's retirement speech in 2011 was extremely emotional, and you didn't have to be a wrestling fan nor know who Edge was to feel an incredible amount of sympathy for the guy as he gave his farewells. It was completely out of the blue. Edge was advertised for Raw just 2 weeks after WrestleMania 27, even though he was SmackDown's world champion, and there were some fans who were already putting two and two together, though no one really believed Edge would retire because he was still in the prime of his career. He had no reason to retire. Turns out Edge was dealing with some serious neck problems, and he was informed that he was risking a lot by continuing to wrestle. Edge could have ended up in a wheelchair, or even worse if he continued his WWE run, so he made the clearly difficult decision to leave pro wrestling while vacating the World Championship. Edge went home, he underwent triple fusion neck surgery, and Edge stated that he started to feel a bit more confident in himself after working on the Vikings TV show and, strangely, falling off his bike during a workout with WWE star Sheamus in one of the Irishman's Celtic Warrior workout videos on YouTube. In an interview for ESPN, Edge said, "Sheamus wants to do different challenging things that he hasn't done before, and I love the mountain bike. In the process of doing that, this stupid competitive thing, I'm flying down a mountain, I hit this one jump and I wiped out. It's a pretty gnarly wipeout. I was going about 20-25 miles per hour, landed on these stones, rolled right up to my feet. But I'm fine. I was all cut up, but my neck was fine. Couple that with doing all these fight scenes over the years on sets, some pretty physical stuff, especially with Vikings, and I thought, okay, I feel really good." Edge's family doctor took a few x-rays, he saw a spine specialist, he eventually went to Birmingham, Alabama to meet up with Dr. Andrews' team, and that's when he realised he could potentially make a comeback to pro wrestling. The WWE's medical team cleared Edge to compete, and the Rated R superstar made his comeback at the 2020 Royal Rumble. It's very emotional. You can see Edge begin to tear up as the audience completely lose their minds, and it looked like Edge hadn't missed a beat as he entered the Royal Rumble for a chance at competing at the WrestleMania 36 main event. Again, like many returns in this video, it's good because you thought it would never happen, but this one gets seriously heightened due to how heartbreaking it was to watch Edge give that farewell speech.
I'm just a sexy boy.
While the validity of Shawn Michaels' 1998 retirement has been discussed by many people within the industry, it was still a huge blow to the WWF when HBK left the company just as the Attitude Era was really beginning to kick off. Shawn was, without question, the best in-ring bell-to-bell performer the WWF had, but he would miss out on one of the company's most lucrative boom periods as guys like Steve Austin, The Rock, and even his old friend Triple H took over the main event spots. It's been rumoured that Shawn was supposed to make an in-ring comeback in 1999, but that didn't happen, and it's also been rumoured that Shawn would stop receiving payments if he didn't get back in the ring sooner rather than later. All these rumours have made people wonder if Shawn's back was really that badly injured in the first place, and many believe Shawn's absence was more about his personal issues rather than his physical ones. But still, it's all unconfirmed and it's never gonna be confirmed. No matter what the case may be, HBK's in-ring return at SummerSlam 2002 was one for the ages. Shawn simply returning to in-ring competition would have been good enough, but the fact that he and Triple H put on an excellent street fight that ranks up there as one of the greatest matches in SummerSlam history is really the icing on the cake. This match is superb thanks to some hard-hitting shots, high-flying moves from HBK. In the end, HBK was able to pick up the win and continue his WWE career, even though this was initially supposed to be a one-off. Many folks think Shawn's second WWE solo run was better than his first. I'm kinda torn on that statement because I could easily pick out a ton of great HBK matches from 92 right up to 97, but it goes to show how well Michaels could still perform after his big comeback match. HBK was a guy you'd want competing on your shows because he guaranteed quality matches every time he stepped in the ring, so it was good to have the Heartbreak Kid back on WWE TV. So tell me, what are some of your favourite WWF or WWE comebacks? I've left quite a lot out here for the second video, but let me know your favourites and I'll get to work on round 2 right away. Maybe you enjoyed John Cena's return at the 2008 Royal Rumble. Maybe Batista interrupting Ric Flair's birthday celebrations did it for you. The Rock made a pretty big impact when he came back in 2011, and maybe this is something you have fond memories of. Let me know in the comments and we'll cover more returns in the future. Thank you for watching this video though, and please take care.